Hi, my name is Matt Widgery from mattwidgery.com. In today's episode I'm going to be giving you a little bit of an overview about a new camera to my collection, which is the Fuji X-T-1. So, the Fuji X-T-1 has been around now for, a year or so, maybe a little bit more than that, and those of you that have watched the channel that know that I've been a huge exponent of the Fuji systems ever since I got the X Pro 1 about a year ago. Will know that I have toyed with over the last about a year or so, between whether or not I should change fully into mirrorless cameras with the Fuji system, or to stick with my DSLRs and maybe upgrade to a full frame system. So that came to a head a couple of weeks ago, and I was starting to really sort of think about this more seriously. My venerable but aging D300, although it still works perfectly, there's just things in that camera that it just doesn't do, which I need it to do, such as doing video, being able to produce images in low light. It really only goes up to about 1100 ISO before it starts to fall apart quite significantly, as opposed to some of the more modern cameras. And so there were various things with it that I was thinking, do I upgrade? Now is probably the time to do it, while there is at least some tiny bit of residual left in that camera. Not that there's a lot, frankly. I mean, the amount that the amount that I'll get for it now compared to what I paid for it initially, doesn't bear thinking about. But anyway, that's the way technology goes. So anyway, I've had the X Pro 1 for about a year. I've loved it, but there are limitations with that camera, as are well documented, and I've reported them on this channel myself. Namely, the autofocus speed, although it has been greatly improved with the firmware updates that Fuji have been putting out with the camera, it's still only a contrast detect system. There's no phase detect in that camera, so it's always going to be a little slower and it hunts a little bit backwards and forwards compared to something which has got phase detect in it. Now, the X-T-1 of course has the hybrid phase and contrast autofocus points in there, and so it's going to be snappier, and indeed it is. The other issues that I had with the X Pro 1, the body isn't weather sealed, and as a professional I do go out in the pouring rain and still have to cough up photos, and so having something which will allow me to stand in the pissing rain and still be able to work without my camera melting is a pretty good idea. And the D300 had the weather sealing in it. The X Pro 1 doesn't. This does. So that was another point in its favour. Finally, the third point that really was a big turn off for me with the original X Pro 1 was the write speed. When you took a picture, it took forever to write that picture to the SD card, and so that's an issue. If you're shooting fast moving stuff, you want to take a quick shot and then check your exposure and everything like that. Check that everything's as it should be before continuing on. You can't really do that because it takes so long. You can see the little light is flashing away and it's writing and writing and writing, and then eventually it does and it gets to the car, but by which time whatever is happening has long since stopped happening and has gone away. And so again, responsiveness really is something that needed to be improved before I could jump ship. So for the last 8 years or so I've been using a dual system. I've been using the Fuji X Pro 1 with the 18mm and the 35mm Fuji lenses, but also some great legacy lenses. I've got adapters that'll run my Nikon glass on there as well, which have been great. But I'm a big Pentax film camera fan, and I have some wonderful old Super Takimar lenses that I've been using with the camera as well, with manual focus, and the manual focus peaking and things like that in the X Pro 1 is brilliant. So that's all been fantastic. However, this camera, since I've had it, and I've had it about a week now, has been the thing that has made me now change 100% over to Fuji. I've now sold all of my Nikon stuff, currently either sold on eBay and is going out in the post, or have posted it, or it's sort of on the last days of the auction, it's all being sold and I'll post it out when it's done. Certainly by the time this video goes out and the majority of you watch it, it'll all be gone and I will be left only with the Fuji cameras. So, how do I feel about that? Well, pretty confident actually. I do really think, having used this now, sort of for a week, the autofocus is blazing fast. certainly doesn't have any of the issues in lag that I had with the X Pro 1. It's a hybrid system, so there is still some contrast detecty type sort of behaviour that it does. You know, it will occasionally, if it's very backlit and very low contrast, it will hunt a little bit to find things, but nowhere near as bad as the X Pro 1 does, and it's certainly something I could live with. I mean, I've tested it in some pretty harsh situations, and honestly it does seem fine, so I'm not really worried about that. The weather sealing is excellent, although, as I've mentioned in previous videos about this, and again, I don't want to go into all the specs about this, because there are so many just specs videos that you can go and watch about the XT-1 that it's really not, you know, the place or the role of this video to just go into every spec sheet of this camera. Suffice it to say that the lenses that I've got, this is the 18mm f2 and my 35 1.4, are not weather sealed, and I'm actually going to get the 18 to 135 weather sealed lens. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, it's weather sealed, which is great. It's surprisingly sharp for a zoom with that range. The picture quality that comes off, it's amazing. It's probably not quite as good as the 18 to 55 f2 to f2.8 to f4 zoom that they do, but that isn't weather sealed. But the trade-off there is having all this reach in one lens, and with the workshops that I do, where, you know, I mean, I've just come back from Lemnos which is a Greek island, and we did, you know, days there shooting in a desert, and there was a lot of sand that was kind of getting everywhere, and changing lenses in sand when your sensor is that exposed is nerve-wracking, to be honest. So having something that's got a long amount of zoom range, so you don't have to change lenses so often, is a really good idea for me personally. The image quality is also brilliant for most things, and I'll still be using faster primes for most of the work that I do, actually, simply because that's the way I like to work with these cameras. I like these tiny pocketable little lenses. I just really think that suits the style of shooting that these cameras are so good for really, really well. So that's that weather sealing. The other thing that I kind of thought it was a bit gimmicky, actually, and I didn't really think that I'd use it, but I've actually adored it, is the Wi-Fi function. What happens with the Wi-Fi function is that, if you don't know, you press that little button there, and what it does is it generates its own little Wi-Fi network, and you can log your phone or tablet onto it, and then you can connect the two. And that's useful for a number of ways. It's not Wi-Fi in the sense you're not going to be able to then use it to browse the internet. It's really just a local network that it produces, and it means, of course, that you can transfer images from the camera straight onto an iPad or onto a phone. iPad, any tablet will do, a tablet or a phone. And that's cool for a few reasons. One, you can upload them straight onto Dropbox or something if you're in the field, so that you've got a backup immediately. You can show them to clients on the back of the larger screen of the tablet, or a bigger phone screen if you've got a bigger sort of phablet type phone. It's just kind of a nice way to be able to show clients than just the small screen that's on the back of the camera. So that's quite cool. But the other thing that I didn't think I would use at all that much, but I've actually loved using it, is the remote control for this camera that's actually built into the app that Fuji does. What that is, when you link this to your phone or tablet, you get the option to actually literally control the camera from the phone. It's a little bit limited. It doesn't do everything, but you can certainly change shutter speed and ISO. So it becomes like a shutter priority system at that stage. The aperture is kind of whatever you leave it on the dial there. There might be a way of getting it fully manual. Maybe I've not really worked out how all the buttons work, but it's good enough for doing what it is. And what that means is that you can have it, if you're doing street photography, for example, you can have it literally around your shoulder like that. So it's kind of tucked down like that, facing your subjects, and you can view what the camera's seeing through your phone, and you can actually take really great candid pictures without sort of interrupting people, and so you can get really close to people and get pictures of people having conversations and things like that. And it's almost like shooting fish in the barrel. It's scary how easy it is. It almost takes the sport out of street photography. It's kind of like, it's embarrassingly easy, frankly, to be able to get really wonderful. You stick a wide angle lens like this 18mm and kind of go right up close to people, and they just think you're sending a text message or something. And it's spookily easy to get these shots. No doubt, as time goes on, there will be huge debates about these cameras and privacy and things like that on the basis of these. Because whilst our street photographers love that, it's a brilliant tool for being able to get really intimate and sort of non-posed candid street photography, which is wonderful. It is also scarily easy to just get up to complete strangers and just take pictures. So, you know, whether or not everybody uses them for good and not evil in the world, who knows? We shall see. But really impressive feature. The other thing that I actually was loving doing a little bit last year and sort of playing around with was having cameras and throwing them up on monopods and just getting high views of things. And I was basically sort of relying a little bit on having a wide angle lens and a little bit kind of like judgment and hit and miss. I was kind of throwing the thing up on the monopod and then using just a timer, a self timer, to just sort of, you know, take the picture, you know, of almost like an aerial view of something, and then checking the camera to see composition and doing a couple of attempts until I got that right. It's fun to do, you know, just this different perspective you get on the world, almost like a sort of elongated selfie stick, but that's pointing away. And it was fun to do, and you get some really nice results with that, just a different perspective on things than you'd normally see. But with this, it's great. I can now put this on top of the monopod, throw it right up high in the air, and properly frame now. I can actually see exactly where things are, and I can adjust exposure and things like that, and do it a lot more accurately. So that's brilliant. Other things that are very, very cool with this, the electronic shutter is wonderful. For those of you, again, that don't know, the native shutter range from this is sort of bulb up to 4,000th of a second with its standard mechanical shutter that it's got in there. It's just got a standard, you know, sort of focal plane shutter. But it's also got an electronic shutter built into it. It came up in a firmware update, actually. It didn't have it when the camera first came out, but Fuji, being what Fuji are, have, you know, added more features to the camera since it was first launched. And one of those things is a shutter that now does 1/32,000th of a second. It's incredible. And there's two things about that. One, obviously, if you're shooting wide open in the middle of the day, you can now do that without using an ND filter over the front of your lens. If you can shoot at 1.2 and blow the background out on a portrait, for example, and at 32,000th of a second you can have it properly exposed. So that's really cool without having to have extra things in front of the lens. It's also, of course, being electronic, completely silent. I don't just mean it's quiet like a leaf shutter, like the one on the X100T is, where it's like a little tick that you hear. I mean, it's silent. Like, there is literally no sound at all. So again, you combine the electronic shutter with the phone thing, and like for candid photography, brilliant. Also for things like wedding photography, I can't wait to use this in a church where you know you can take pictures away, you know, far away, and literally not interrupt anybody, which is brilliant. Other nice features on it: it does 8 frames a second. Continuous shooting in RAW and with continuous autofocus and focusing in between shots as well. So it will focus in between shots at 8 frames per second. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. So good. And it really works as well. You know, it really does focus incredibly well. The video mode is so much better, but apart from anything else, you know, you've got this ability to be able to, when I do videos, for example, I throw the camera up on sticks, and then it's just a question of me sort of, you know, trying to figure out whereabouts in the frame I'm likely to be and doing a couple of test shots, which is what I'm having to do. I'm filming this on the X-Pro1 now because I'm holding this. But with this, I can throw the camera up on the sticks. I can get into the app view because I can record video as well as stills from that app. And I can frame myself exactly, I can adjust my lights to exactly how I want, hit record, and know I'm going to be in frame perfectly, so that's great. But also, if you're doing more sort of, you know, run and gun stuff, you're moving around, you want to do shots of things that are moving, it has... it uses the phase detect chips on the sensor to be able to do continuous autofocusing during video, and I've actually done a couple of tests with that, and it's bloody awesome. It's so much better than what I was using with the Nikon D5100s, which were my previous video cameras, which are now all being sold. Brilliant, and you can adjust everything during, you know, live recording. You can adjust your aperture and your shutter speed and your ISO and things like that. You can do that all on the fly. Why you'd want to adjust shutter speed while you're recording, I don't know, but certainly aperture is a good one. You know, ISO, whatever, I kind of, you know, tend to leave that either where it is if it's a static shot, or if I'm just doing a documentary thing, I will put that on auto and just let it move up and down by itself. Frankly, it seems to do a pretty good job. So that's all that stuff. So I will be doing other videos about this where I'm going to be going more into like samples of stuff that I've done. I just haven't done that much with it. I've literally only had it like a week and a bit and haven't shot that much with it yet. So I will do more videos on this, much like the X Pro 1 and you know, sort of document my time with it. But this will be slightly different to the videos that I had with the X Pro 1, because in the X Pro 1 videos that I've done up till now, I've had this kind of like split personality thing where I've been, oh, you know, mirrorless DSLR, and you know, am I ready? Is it quite there yet? So it was really my sort of transitional journey into mirrorless. Now this is going to be a set of videos about using mirrorless exclusively as a professional. So this is a different type of thing altogether, and I'll be documenting my experience, much like the X Pro 1, warts and all. You know, if there's things that come out disastrously, I'll tell you about that stuff too, because I think that's important. You know, I'm expecting, in fact, that it's not all going to be plain sailing. There will no doubt be things I encounter along the way which I have to, you know, deal with, and issues I have to overcome. But that's what us photographers do, right? You know, we're problem solvers. So, you know, this is how we earn our bread and butter. We look at a situation as it presents itself, and we figure out how we make the best out of it. So that's it. I'm going to leave it there for now. But suffice it to say that in the first week or so of ownership of the XT-1, I am absolutely adoring it. I love all its proper little dials and everything like that. It feels like a proper camera in the hand. The big viewfinder is just as good as everybody says it is. I love the split screen manual focusing thing when I'm using legacy lenses. I adore that. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's a brilliant, brilliant camera. If you haven't already tried one out, you know, grab, beg, borrow, steal one and try it out for yourself. It's brilliant. It's all the things that I hoped the X Pro 1 would be, and I still love my X Pro 1. I'm going to keep it with me as well as a second camera. But in terms of being able to make that use, make that transition to professional use, for me personally, and there'll be some professionals out there for whom the X Pro 1 is just fine, but for me, the XT-1 really is the perfect camera. It really is. So on that note, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Cheers.